All right, welcome in everybody for our Liberty Digital New Features webinar. So in today's webinar, we're going to be covering some of the cool new features that have been added to Liberty Digital over the past 6 months. So we'll be looking at all of those new features, and I'll include some of my favorites as well right at the end. So for those of you that don't already know me, my name is Jacob Devine. I'm one of the technical support analysts here at SoftLink. You may have met me when doing your initial implementations or during training or even on the support desk, so plenty of places that you might have seen my face around before. Now, just to start off with, when you are using Liberty, we do have a little help button right up the top right here that allows for you to view the release notes for our latest releases. So going to our next slide, once you go into that screen, we do have a section specifically for your release notes. So while you are able to search for different help guides and things like that from this section, you are also able to find release notes for the latest versions. Perfect. So if you ever have received a notification letting you know that you've been updated, you'll be able to find all of the release notes from the back end here as well. Perfect. So during our session today, we're going to look at some of our cool new features like ERM, which is our electronic resource management module. We'll also be looking at sideloading, which is a new way to get resources into your federated search. We'll also be looking at the improved federated search interface. And we'll also be looking at user role control, so the ability to shift your user role up and down depending on your uses. And of course, as always, lots more. So without further ado, let's jump straight into the system and take a look at some of these great new features. Perfect. So we're starting off really strong here with our beautiful digital dashboard, but the first feature that we're going to look at today is the ERM module. So like I mentioned before, ERM is our electronic resource management module, and it's going to allow you to track subscriptions and license usage for your external subscriptions. So to get started, ERM is all managed under your acquisitions module. So under acquisitions, we can go to digital subscriptions, and this is where you're going to be able to set up all of your brand new digital subscriptions. So to get us started, we'll create a quick example. We can click on create new, and this allows us to create a new resource for this digital subscription. Now, one of my great tips when you are getting started with using the digital subscriptions module is to create a brand new bib type for this purpose. And what that's going to allow you to do then, of course, is choose exactly what is going to be included in the details for this resource, while also having the ability to hide it from the OPAC. So we'll go ahead and show that process to start off with. So we'll go to cataloging and then bib types. And we're just going to create a new bib type for ERM, and we'll just give it the bib type code ERM as well. We'll go through and check no for a lot of these. Things like copies, we can set never. Give it a URL and a file if we'd like. It's just a regular resource. You're able to track all of that information from the resource record as well, which we'll show in just a second. The main one that we're going to be looking at here is, of course, hidden in search. So we don't want these resources to be shown when people are searching across the system. So we can just select hidden. We'll go down, not an interlibrary loan or an ebook, and we'll click on save. So we've got this brand new bib type now that we've created for our ERM module specifically. So now we can go back into acquisitions, digital subscriptions, and get started with actually creating our subscription. So we'll choose new. Otherwise, you're also able to select from an existing resource. So if you were tracking your subscriptions in Liberty already using resources, you can click on existing and then choose those from the list. But for this one, we're going to use our brand new ERM bib type and just click on next. So this is going to bring you to your resource creation screen. And in this case, we're going to want to track a subscription for our IEEE Explore digital library. So we've got a subscription for this platform, and we're going to track it within this resource. Of course, you can add in as much detail as you'd like to that resource record, but we're just going to keep it really simple there. Next up, we have the supplier. So if you have a certain supplier that you wanted to use for this, this record, we could type that in. It is a predictive list, so if we use something like EBS, EBSCO automatically comes up, but you are also able to add in a new supplier. So we'll use IEEE Explore and add new supplier. This brings you to your supplier creation screen, where we're going to just put in some pretty basic details. You've got things like your currencies, claim components, and URLs as well, but we're just going to leave that as is and click on Save. So we've created our resource. We've created a supplier to track that within our digital subscription as well. The next is choosing the branch that this subscription is for. For this one, we're just going to choose Lawson's. And we then have the option of choosing a status for the subscription. So whether it's something that's pending, it's not an active subscription, but we've not cancelled it, we're just waiting on approval. But for this one, we're going to set it as active. It's a subscription that we signed up for, and it's currently active, and we're using those licenses. We can then choose how this license is costed, so whether it's per unit or whether it's for the total cost. So for example, if we set no, we can say that the total cost is $10,000, or we can set this to yes, and it changes to the unit cost. So for this one, we're just going to do a total cost for 1 unit. Perfect. We then have the start date and expiry date for our subscription. So start date of the subscription might have been the 1st of July. It's a financial year subscription. And then our expiry date is going to be the end of June for 2026. So we'll set our date for June 2026 for the 30th. So we've got a 1-year period here where this subscription is going to be active. Perfect. We also have the option to set whether this subscription is automatically renewing as well. So once it gets to that expiry date, we can change whether Liberty will automatically renew this for us or if it won't. Now, Liberty does track the expiry date of these subscriptions for you and will send out email alerts and even show some information on your overview screen, which we'll take a look at in a moment as well. The last 2 fields here that we have for our digital subscription are the terms and conditions URL for any terms and conditions that you'd like to show for the subscription, and also a notes field for any additional information that you'd like to track. Perfect. So once we're happy with that, we can click on Save, and that's now created the subscription from the system. So if this is a sort of overall subscription that you're looking to just track within Liberty, you could leave it at this point. We've got our total cost, we've got our start and expiry date. Liberty's going to send you out notifications when that subscription is coming up for renewal. Otherwise, if we'd like to track who is using this database, we can click on Add Digital Assignment, and we're able to set a specific client that's using this subscription. So we can set myself, for example, as the person that's using this active subscription. We then have the start and end date. So if I'm going to have access for the entire period of the subscription, we can change this to the end of June for 2026 as well. So my access to this digital subscription is going to last from the start of the subscription to the end of it. And click on Save. And that's now assigned myself to that subscription. Now, the great part about assigning people to these digital subscriptions is the ability to send emails to them asking whether they need access still for that subscription. So all of your assignments where the subscription itself is handled under acquisitions and then digital subscriptions, the assignments themselves are handled under circulation and then digital assignments. If we head back to our subscription now, you can see right at the top that we have the number of active assignments. Obviously, we've only got 1 unit, so we've just got 1 assignment. so we can see who exactly that belongs to from there. Otherwise, the other option that we have from the subscription is still required email. So we can actually send an email out to this borrower asking if they still require access to this resource. So if I wanted to ask Jacob, are you still using this resource? Can we reassign it to someone else? You can click send emails, and that one has been sent successfully. If we go back into our system here and view that email, we've got all of the details and including when that electronic resource expires as well. Perfect. If Jacob's written back to us and let us know that he doesn't need that subscription anymore, we can go into the active assignment and either end the digital assignment, which is just going to change the end date to now, or if we'd like to retain that end date, we can just reassign to somebody else. So for example, if I wanted to move this one over to Robert now, I can set my start and end date just like we did before for the last one. So we can set our start and end and save. So you can see now that that one has been reassigned to Robert, and we're able to track all of those details. So rather than reassigning, we are also able to end the assignment just by clicking on end, and it's automatically moved the end date to today's date and ended that subscription for us. Perfect. Now, like I mentioned, there are multiple notification emails that can be sent out detailing the digital subscription end dates. So if we go to management parameters, the one that we're going to look at is parameter 1613. So if we scroll down just a little bit here to expiring digital subscriptions email days. So you're actually able to determine from here what days these expiring emails are sent out on. So if you only wanted these emails sent out to the library team on Friday, we can select from there. And you're able to select multiple days by holding Control and then ticking those appropriately. Alternatively, you can hold Shift and select all of them if you'd like. Perfect. We save that one. Next, I'm just going to readjust my digital subscription so that it expires in the next 28 days. And we'll take a look at some of the dashboard widgets that show for that record. So if we just put it as expiring at the end of this month, for example, and click Save. Oops. We'll update our cost. There we go. So now that our expiry date is set to the end of the month, we're able to go over to our dashboard, and there is a brand new module that you're able to add to your dashboard here. So we have all of our different dashboards for things like recent orders, collection summaries, and subscriptions. But if we go to management parameters, and we've got another parameter here, which is 1156. We edit and go right down to the bottom here. We have dashboard overview modules. And from here, you're actually able to choose which modules you'd like to appear from that basic overview screen. And like I mentioned, we have one here for digital subscriptions about to expire. So any that are within 28 days of expiring. You can add that one in and save. And if we go back to our overview screen now, and we'll close off that. Right at the bottom, we have expiring digital subscriptions. We can see our one there, how many people it's currently assigned to, which is 0, and then the date that it expires as well. We also have one last area, which is our subscriptions that are due for review. So the things to do gives us our digital subscriptions that are about to renew, or if you don't set it to automatically renew, it'll give you the same thing for expiring. Perfect. So that's the ERM module, really, really useful for tracking those digital subscriptions for any databases or even software that you subscribe to, where there are certain licenses that get assigned to certain people. You can track things like the codes associated with them through that notes field, and keep your borrowers up to date with licenses that they're currently using. Perfect. All right, so the next one that we're going to move on to now is called sideloading. So sideloading allows for you to import resources into the system, either via CSV, MARC, or even created manually. And those resources can then be searched across separately from the rest of your catalog. So there are some of you that I know are very, very heavy users of our federated searching system. And this is set up in a very, very similar way. So from system and then search sources, this is of course where all of your federated search sources are created. So things like your EBSCO databases, ProQuest, any of those external databases are going to be available from here. But as part of our new update, we have added the option to create, instead of Britannica or any of those other sources, we can go sideload resources. And like I mentioned, this allows for you to basically create your own database of resources that are searchable separately from the catalog. So we can enter in our IEEE Explore, for example, and click Add. So IEEE Explorer is a database that doesn't have any sort of connectors that we're able to use to pull those resources into Federated Search. So the alternative here is that we can use sideload to bring those resources in. We don't need to set up any additional details. We're able to choose things like the grouping if we'd like, but we'll leave that as databases and just click on Save. So from there, we've created our sideload resources connector, and it's ready to have resources now imported into it. So how do we do that? So like I mentioned, there are 3 different methods for adding resources to your sideload source. The first of which is through management, import, and under sideload MARC. So sometimes these databases can provide you with a full export of all of the resources included in your subscription. And you could use that file, whether it be a MARC file or a CSV file, to import it directly into your sideload source. So for example, if IEEE Explore has provided us with a MARC file of all the resources included in our subscription, we can choose that one from here and then click on Run to import those resources. You do have some options for managing the import as well. So for example, new records, how they should be handled, and then even existing records. So if they've provided a MARC file where some resources have had updates, whether they're URLs or authorities and things like that have been updated, you can actually do a existing import where you replace or enhance the existing records. Perfect. The other option, like I mentioned, for importing these resources in bulk and is a bit more common for these external databases is via a CSV file. So those of you that use your CSV imports a lot know how this goes already. So from your management, import, and then CSV, we can create what we call a CSV template, which basically determines how this file is laid out and how it should then be imported into the system. So we can go to our CSV import templates here, and we have our ones for borrowers, resources, loans, and journal indexing. But we're going to create a new one, and we're going to select sideload resource.xml. We'll just call this sideload import and click on Add. Perfect. So from here, you're now able to enter all of the information that the external database provides to you. So for example, if we get the title, ISBN, description, and publisher and subjects, maybe even authors as well, and finally the URL. So the URL is going to be your key when creating these sideload resources. The URL field is mandatory. So since we're linking out to an external database, we'll always need that URL to tell us where we're actually finding this resource. So we can click on Save, and we're now able to use this CSV template to import resources. If you haven't done a CSV import before, there is a great help guide. We do CSV import. There is a really great help guide here for importing CSV files and showing you how to do that process, which I would highly recommend. Perfect. So like I've mentioned, now that we've created our template, from management import CSV, we now have our sideload import CSV template, and we can go through and do our import just like we would any other. Perfect. Now, the final way for creating your sideload resources is manually through the cataloging module. So if we go to cataloging and then sideload resources, we have the option to add in new resources. So it gives you every field that you're able to enter for a sideload resource here, and we're able to enter in the details. So for example, if we have a New Zealand law report, and it's from IEEE Explore, and like I mentioned, the one field that is mandatory on top of the title, obviously, is going to be your URL. So if I just enter in a basic sort of placeholder URL and click on Save, that resource has now been added into the catalog under that sideload source. So it's not going to be available from your basic search or your advanced search. It's going to only be searchable from your sideload search or your federated search. You're able to add additional information to the resource from here as well, so things like your thumbnails can be uploaded, but we'll go ahead and do a search for that resource. So from our OPAC, if you haven't done a federated search before, it's just another option under your basic and advanced search for federated search. Perfect. Now, those of you that have been using federated search for quite a while may notice an immediate difference with this little screen here, and we'll go over that in just a minute. But what we're going to do is we're just going to deselect all of our databases and just search across IEEE Explore for our law report. Perfect. So there's a little example of our database, gives us the resource with a direct link to the URL. Obviously, when you're importing resources, you'll have quite a bit more information that's available from this screen. So you can add all of that in and have them searchable from your federated search. Great. So that's our sideload imports. That's something that people have been waiting for quite a while. Really useful if you do subscribe to a lot of legal databases that don't have Z3950 connectors or an API connection. You can now import those resources directly into Liberty and have them searchable separately to your catalog. Great. So now let's talk about the federated search improvements. So you will have already noticed under federated search, we have our different search options available from here. And we've now separated these out so that it works a lot better, especially for those of you that have hundreds of federated search connectors. So there are some of you that have 50 or more, and it could get quite cramped in the old view. But with this new view, you're able to have all of your databases separated by groupings, and then select only the ones from that specific grouping. Perfect. On top of that, if when federated searching, I know, for example, I don't want any of the other libraries, encyclopedias, or other providers, I can deselect those. And then from the menu option here, save as my defaults, or as a library staff member, I can save as the library defaults. So we have a couple options there for changing how your federated search works for not only yourself, but also your customers as a whole. So I can do a search for, let's do law reports again, but over all of our databases. And they are now separated by groupings directly from the top here as well. So we have our local library, databases, encyclopedias, and the rest of those all separated separately. And I'll show you in a moment how you are able to create those database groupings. So from here, we're able to jump into any of our different searches. So we've got our points of reference center here with different resources associated with our law report search. We've got encyclopedias, other libraries, other providers, things like Google Scholar, IBIS World, and Wikipedia, all set up here as external search providers. Perfect. So to create these database groupings, you are able to go just down to System, Search Sources again, and there's an option for Search Source Group. So we have videos, databases, and local library and the rest of those, and they're able to then be assigned to your search sources just by going to Search Source, and if we search for IEEE, for example, we can then change the grouping that this search source is associated with. So if we didn't want it associated with databases, maybe it's a video provider, we're able to change the grouping from here and click on Save. So that one is now going to be available in Federated Searching under Videos, just there. Perfect. So if you haven't been categorizing your Federated Search connectors already, because this was something that you were able to do previously, I'd highly recommend jumping into the system, going to System, Search Sources, and then from your top right dropdown, Search Source Group. Really great way to allow your borrowers to only search over the specific connectors that they'd like. Great. All right, so that's our sideload and federated search improvements. The next one that we're going to take a look at is what we call user role control. So this new feature allows for you to switch between your admin profile and what we call a low privilege mode with just the click of a button. So the only sort of setup that you have to do for this one is to go to Management, Parameters, and we're just going to go to parameter 1172. Scrolling right down to the bottom of this grouping here, we'll click on Edit first. We have Staff Downshift User Role. So you're able to actually select what user role is going to be used when you downshift. So if there's a certain user role that you're testing OPAC permissions for, we're able to select it from here. Now note that the user roles that are listed here are only the ones that aren't using a staff license. So anything that has access to the management side of Liberty, whether it be the cataloging circulation, the circulation desk, things like that, those user roles won't be able to be selected from here. Now, the basic one for most of us using Liberty here is going to be OPAC only. So we can select that one and click on Save. Perfect. So once that's done, we can go to, say, cataloging resources, for example, and if we're now looking to go view what a OPAC only user views, we can go to the little chess piece icon in the top right here, which says downshift user role to OPAC only. We can then click that one. And we now have our homepage. You'll notice all of the hidden subpages are hidden. I don't have any of my admin options from the right here. And I'll only have options for the basic view. So for example, if I go view a resource, I no longer have my view and management options. So this is exactly what your borrowers would be seeing when viewing the OPAC. We also don't have options to go to our management side of the system, but when we're ready to shift our user role back up, we can click on the king icon, and there we go. So we see I've got things like analytics, help, and our management side back now. So we can click into that one, and there's our management screen. So this is really useful for changing how you handle sort of testing different privileges and testing what your users can see in the catalog. It can be really useful as well if you do things like bib type restrictions to certain user roles. You can test that without needing to create a whole new profile, doing things like setting up SSO or even just setting up a new password for a new profile in general. Just using the same profile for everything can be really, really useful. Like I mentioned, this does only work for user roles that don't use a staff license. So if we go to our system, then user roles, any of the ones that have a tick for staff license won't be able to be selected for that parameter. And don't worry, we do have a slide at the end of the session today that has a list of all the parameters that we've talked about today, along with any page layout edits as well, which we'll get into in the next one. Perfect. So again, really useful not only for seeing what your OPAC only users see, but also for just freeing up a staff license if you're not doing anything in the back end of the system. Perfect. The next one that we're going to take a look at is some authority control MARC improvements. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to Management Parameters. And what we've done, we've implemented a really nice feature for those of you that use MARC editing to allow notes and scope notes for your authorities to view directly from the editor. So I know we have a lot of MARC lovers who use Liberty, and I'm sure you'll be very pleased to see this one. So we'll go to parameter 2040 and just edit that grouping. And the parameter is allow non-preferred authority terms. This can be one that really helps you tidy up your data. If you find that the cataloging team sometimes add in additional authorities where they shouldn't, we can click on no, and that's going to prevent non-preferred authority terms from being used in the catalog. So we can click on save, and that's step one for setting up our little process here. The next part, we'll go to System, Pages, and we're going to search for a thesaurus. So under entity name, we'll search for thesaurus and search for that one. And this allows for us to add our notes and scope notes to the page layout. We already have the lead term, but we can add in our notes and scope notes here and just click on save, and we'll take a look at what that looks like from the MARC editor now in a moment. So we'll go find one of our authorities that does already have some notes or scope notes. It's going to be our administrative responsibility subject. So we'll go into this one and edit. We'll change this one to verified even. And scrolling right down, we can see we have notes of M302 and then a scope note for the use of the works. So we can click on save to verify that one. And we'll take a look at how these scope notes and notes now appear within the MARC editor. So go to Cataloging Resources, and we'll just create a new monograph, and we'll make sure to edit it in MARC 21. Perfect. So from here, of course, we're able to add in our different tags, things like the title, but the one that we're going to look at here is the subject, and I'm just going to search for administrative responsibility. So we have our notes and then our scope notes. So that information is all now available directly from the MARC editor, allowing you to view that and click on the one that you want and click on OK to add, of course. Perfect. So that's a nice little change for those of you that use your MARC editing in Liberty. You can go to our subject, and this works for all of your authorities. So your authors, publishers, subjects that you're adding into the system, you can add in now your notes and scope notes to appear directly from the editor view. Perfect. Now, using page layout editing, you are also able to make certain parts of the page larger than others. So if you find that your notes are a lot shorter than your scope notes and you'd like to increase the size of that one, you can go back to your system, pages, and we'll show that one again. So entity name was thesaurus. And from here, we're able to change the column width. So we can go in and even remove our notes field. And it's automatically going to go in here, and we're able to change the width. So you're able to make one field larger than another and change how those are handled. So now that we've made the scope notes 80% and removed the notes field, we can go in and add another one, and we'll take a look at how that looks now. So we've got our subject, we've got our administrative responsibility with a much larger field for the scope notes. Perfect. So that's a nice little change, again, for those of you that do use the MARC editor in Liberty. The next one that I'm going to take a look at is the ability to add a last activity field on your borrower records. So this one can be added to your borrower pages by going to System, Pages, and instead of searching for a specific page, we're just going to click on Turn On. So we'll go back to our circulation borrowers, and I'll just find my record. And from the bottom of your screen here, you'll have the option to change the layout of the screen. So from here, we have a page. It's already been added to the page in our system, but in yours, it might be in the unused column. But it's going to be called Last Activity. So we can find that one in the unused column and move it over. And it's put it right at the bottom. So we'll just move it right up to the top. Got a lot of pages, I've got a lot of fields rather in this layout. How far has that moved it up? I'll do a little bit more. There we go. So we'll put it just above our collection and save. So from the borrower record itself, we can see our last activity where it has 3:27 p.m. on March 20th. Now, there is some customizing that you can do to change when this last active field is updated. We can go to Management Parameters, and we're just going to search for parameter 1168 and 1169. So these two allow you to determine when that field is updated. So what sort of activity updates that field. So for example, if you only want this to be updated when a loan is issued or a loan is returned, we can select those two. And when those actions are performed for this specific borrower, it's going to automatically update that field. So if we leave those as is, we just want to know when a borrower has last returned or borrowed an item, we can go up and click on Save. And there's even more functionality within parameter 1169. So client last activity resource search strategy. So if we only wanted to know, for example, when the borrower borrows things that belong to a certain BIP type, so ebook, for example, we could select that just like so. And now it's only going to update this field when an ebook is issued to this borrower. In this case, we don't want that. We just want to leave it blank and click on Save. So now if I go into my circulation desk, and I'm just going to return one of my items. So I've got a barcode here, B649. If I return that one, and we'll reserve that, fine. And close out. If we now go back to my borrower profile, you can see my last activity there. Something else that's really cool about the last activity field is that it's completely reportable as well. So from your Generate Report button right at the top here, we can go to New Custom Report and create our report name. So if we wanted last active, we choose our alias, our barcode, and that last activity field. So if we just wanted a list of all of our users and we wanted to see who has been active the most recent, we could create reports on this field in Excel format and even sort it by that field. So we've created last active, so you're able to then sort by last activity, either ascending or descending there. Perfect. So not just a great way to view when your users were last active at a glance, but also having the option to report on that field and get additional information on when your borrowers are performing different actions in the system. Perfect. So for the last little bit of this session, I will be running through some of my favorite lesser known features from our latest releases. So we have a few different ones here. And the first is going to be detailed book sliders. If you talk to me in training, you'll know that this one is absolutely my favorite feature from the past year or so, and you'll have seen it right on our OPAC here under our slider. So where your original basic sliders just have the image, your detailed book sliders have the image, but also your title, description, author details, a lot of really cool information that really makes your OPAC pop. If we zoom out a little bit here, you can see that a bit better. So we can see all of our different resources along with some additional information about them there. Now, to enable this feature, we are going to just go to System and then Pages. And we're just going to search for page name contains custom info slider. Alternatively, of course, you can just go into the box here and go page name, custom info slider, and add. Editing this one, you are then able to change what fields are shown for this, these different types of information boxes. So you could show some really basic fields like your title, extract, excerpt, and a button. But you're also able to add things like your descriptions, GMDs, and publication dates. So we can add our publication date in just below the responsibility, for example. And if we now refresh our homepage, we can now see the publication date just below the responsibility there. Perfect. So that's a really, really cool way to show more information on your homepage and include that additional information. There is some additional sort of tracking that you can do for electronic resources as well. So for example, we can see on our physical resources, we have a view this resource button. But if we go and edit and scroll right to the bottom for this one, rather than a reading list, I'm just going to do a custom search for URL is not blank, so everything that has a URL. And save. So on your information boxes here, we can go into edit again. So now that we've got all resources that have a URL, we can change the layout for the actual edit page here. And we've got the option for link type. So we can move that one over and click on save. And if we just refresh that edit page, we have the option to change whether this link is going to go to the detail page, which is the Liberty resource detail page, or the URL. So if there's a URL on your resources and you want people to be able to click directly into those different resources, you can set that one up as so and click on save. And now when people click on these URLs at the bottom, so the view the resource, it's going to bring them directly to that site. So you click view this resource, it opens up a new tab with our URL here. So that's going to work for any of your resources that do have URLs. Any that are in the same information box but don't have a URL, we'll simply just go back to the details page. Perfect. So again, that was the link type field, which is added to your page layout. We can change that back to our reading list and remove our search restriction. Isn't that amazing? I just love that feature so much. Perfect. So the next one we're going to take a look at is to do with your interests. So interest emails can now contain what we call a anchor link. So anchor links allow for you to basically go very quickly to a different part of the email. I'll show you the setup just to start with, and then we'll take a look at an example. So if you are already using interests and you don't know what email report you're using, you can go to circulation, interests, and then interest delivery groups. And if you have a custom delivery group, so we've got a monthly newsletter, for example, you'll have the report that it's using just in the report field here. So that's going to be for any of your custom ones that aren't daily with housekeeping. So interest notification high volume is used for daily alerts, and for most of them, honestly. But if we're using our daily with housekeeping and we want to know what report we're using, we can go to Management Parameters, and we're just going to go to parameter 1605. And this shows us our interest notification email report, and that one's going to be used for any of your housekeeping interest alerts. Perfect. So now that we know that one, we can actually go ahead and edit it to add in the anchor links. So we can go to System, Reports, and then from the top right drop down, open Email Reports. So we've got all of our loan reports for overdue notices and things like that, but we also have notification groups. So we've got our interest notification double grouped, which we can go into, and this is the one that's being used for our housekeeping interest alerts. So we can go ahead and edit that one, change things like our borrower detail page, introductory and summary text, but the one that we're actually interested in is the anchor field. So right at the bottom, you have the option of creating a interest heading, interest group, or resource source anchor field. So we could choose interest group, for example, and save. And that's all you need to do. We've selected what our anchor field is going to be. You will need to make sure that your anchor field is in the group by. So obviously, if you're not grouping by interest group, you won't be able to select interest group as your anchor. Now, for what that actually looks like in an email, we have a little example opened up here that I sent myself this morning. And it's got all of our different interest groups that are included in this email. So we've got cooking and hobbies, news topics. It's quite a large email, so a bit of scrolling there. But if there's a specific area that I'm interested in, I can just click on legal. And there we go. It brings me straight to the legal interest group. So these are all of our legal resources that have been added in however long. So really good for those of you that do have interest emails that go out to your borrowers with sometimes hundreds of resources. Having the option for them just to immediately jump to the interest group that they're actually interested in can be really, really useful and a great time saver. Perfect. So we can close out of that one. And we can move on to our very last feature for the day. So another one that is very, very useful is we've added the option to report on file sizes. So from your digital dashboard, of course, you have your space used right in the top right here, which shows you exactly how much space is being used by your Liberty database. When this is getting close to your limit, or if you've even bypassed your limit, you can do a quick search under cataloging resources, and you can do a search for data file type is not blank, and this is going to show you every resource that has a file. Alternatively, if you mainly use attachments, you could search for attachment type is not blank, and that's going to find every resource with an attachment. In this case, we're just going to look for files and do search. So we can see here that we have 83 different resources, all of which have a file attachment. So previously, you weren't able to report on or sort these resources by their file sizes, but now, if we jump into our sort, we can search for total file size and bring that one over, and then sort descending and click sort. So we see our very top resource here, Solid Geology of South Australia. We have a 77 megabyte file here, which is using up quite a bit of space, and we're able to view all of those resources in order of size. So we can see there, for example, we have 9 megabytes as our next largest. Want to choose this one and make changes if needed, do compression, things like that, depending on the file. Now you will notice, for example, that we have our Russian document here, which has gone across the 12 megabyte file, and that's because we sorted by total file size. So while this individual file is larger than the file here, this one also has an attachment, so that size is doubled, and we're just sorting by the total file size. Another really great search that you can do if you're just looking for any files in the system at all, we could do a search for data file type is not blank, or attachment file type is not blank. So we can do that one. Oh, whoops. It's just attachment type. And this is going to show you all of your resources with either a file or an attachment. So we could sort this one then by total file sizes, descending, and we see that that same resource is still the top one there. Perfect. So while sorting can be really useful just for tracking all of that without leaving Liberty, you can of course also click on Generate Report and New Custom Report, and we'll just do file sizes, and we can do catalog ID, title, and total file sizes. So we've added 3 new fields, one of which is total file sizes, which we've looked at, total attachment size, and computed file size. So total attachment size and file size are just for the individual attachments or the file, whereas total files is just going to calculate all files in total. So we can then do an Excel report and save. And just like we were sorting in our list before, we could bring over total file sizes and sort that descending. If we then click Go and download, there we go. We can download our Excel report and see the total file sizes sorted in descending order by how large those files are. So if you're looking to get an export of the files in your system and see where that usage is being used, you likely have more than 100 resources with files. You're able to get that information out and sort it all through an external report. Perfect. All right, so that is all of the features that we're going to look to at today. Those last 3 are really, really useful and one of my favorites. So let's do a quick wrap up, shall we? So we've got a list of some of the parameters that we looked at today. So we've got things like our parameter for ERM email notification days, user role control, the borrower last activity configuration, so choosing what actions update that last activity field, allow non-preferred authority terms, and then the 2 page layout edits for our MARC authority control and our book slider control. Now, never fear, you will get a recording of this this webinar after the fact, so you can always come back to this later. So thank you for coming to today's feature recap. Today we looked at ERM for amazing management of your digital subscriptions, sideloading for adding resources from those external databases, Federated Search improvements, MARC improvements, reporting options for file sizes, and interest improvements for your anchor links. Perfect. So as I mentioned before, you can see all of the release notes directly from within Liberty from that help section there. Highly recommend that if you aren't sure what's been added in some of the latest releases. Perfect. And of course, as always, if you do want more information, please feel free to contact the support team at supportic@softlinkint.com, and a member of our team would be more than happy to help further. So feel free to let us know if you have any other questions. All right, perfect, everyone. Thank you again for coming, and I'll see you again soon. Bye.